My name's Eleanor Davis and I just turned 72. Never in a million years did I think I'd be sharing this story, but here I am, sitting alone in my quiet little kitchen in Neepville, Illinois, finally ready to talk about what happened at my granddaughter's baptism last spring. That morning had all the makings of a proper celebration. I drove the usual 45 minutes to St. Benjamin's Catholic Church over in Oakbrook. That's where my son Benjamin and his wife, Christine, live in that gorgeous colonial house I've been helping them afford ever since Sophie came along 3 years ago. I'd picked out my nicest navy dress, the one with those tiny pearl buttons Benjamin once complimented me on during Easter lunch. In the church parking lot, I was putting on my lipstick with slightly trembling hands. Not because of age, mind you, but because I was so excited. Sophie's my one and only grandbaby, and that day felt bigger than anything. Like it mattered more than all the holidays put together. The church looked absolutely breathtaking that morning. Sunlight was pouring in through the stained glass windows, casting these soft rainbow patterns all across the pews. I made sure to arrive early like I always do, holding tightly onto the little white Bible I'd brought just for Sophie. It used to be Benjamin's. He had it when he was baptized all the way back 34 years ago. Then Christine came sweeping into the church wearing this elegant cream dress that probably cost more than what I spend on groceries in a month. She looked like she stepped out of a magazine, as usual, blonde hair perfectly done in those loose bouncy waves, and that kind of effortless confidence that makes you feel like she's never once doubted herself. "Eleanor," she said, giving me one of those air kisses, close but not quite touching my cheek. "You made it." Something about how she said it hit me the wrong way. Like she was surprised I'd even show up. As if any grandmother wouldn't move mountains to be there for her granddaughter's baptism. Benjamin showed up right behind her, cradling Sophie in her beautiful christening gown. The very same one I wore when I was a baby, and that Benjamin had worn too, carefully kept all these years by my mother just for moments like this. "Hi, Mom," he said, giving me a quick one-armed hug while juggling Sophie. "Thanks for coming." Just that. Thanks for coming. Not, "It means so much that you're here." Or Sophie was asking for Grandma. Nope, just a polite nod like I was a cousin from out of town doing them a small favor. But I swallowed that sting and told myself to let it go. This day wasn't about me. It was about Sophie, my beautiful little girl with her daddy's deep brown eyes and her mama's determined chin. The baptism itself was really lovely. Father Reynolds gave a heartfelt sermon about faith and family, and about how it truly takes a village to raise a child. While he spoke, I found myself thinking about all the ways I tried to be part of Sophie's village, helping cover the mortgage so they had a safe home, sending grocery money when Benjamin's sales job hit a dry spell, paying for daycare when Christine decided to pick up shifts again at the boutique downtown. I'd never once asked to be thanked for it. I didn't even mention the money unless they brought it up themselves. It just felt right, like the sort of thing a mother naturally does to support her son while he builds his own family. After the ceremony, we all made our way to the fellowship hall for the reception. Christine had really gone all out with the setup. White and gold balloons everywhere. A showstopper of a cake from that pricey bakery on Main. And way more food than we needed for the 20 or so guests who actually showed up. I found myself standing by the gift table, just watching Sophie totter around in her little white dress, when Christine walked over. She had a glass of champagne in her hand, and that particular smile she puts on when she's about to bring something up that she knows I might not like. "Eleanor, we need to talk about Christmas," she said quietly, making sure no one else could hear. "Christmas?" I asked, raising my eyebrows. "Sweetheart, it's only May." "I know," she said, lowering her voice even more. "But this year, Benjamin and I are trying to plan early, and we've been thinking it might make more sense to host Christmas at our place instead of having the big family thing at yours." I felt a little sting in my chest. For the past 3 Christmases, I'd been the one hosting dinner. Just Benjamin's small family, my sister Nancy, and a few close friends. It had become one of the traditions I cherished most, especially since that old dining table had been passed down in my family for generations. "Oh," I said, doing my best to keep my voice steady. "Well, if that's what you both feel is best." "It's not really about what we want," Christine replied, still wearing that same polished smile. "It's just more practical. Sophie's getting older now, and it's easier for us to manage her routine at home. Plus, we were thinking of inviting a few of our friends this year. The Millers from Benjamin's office, maybe the Fairbanks from the country club." I nodded politely, even though a chill settled deep in my belly. These people weren't longtime friends of the family. They were Christine's social circle, the kinds of folks I'd only ever chatted with once or twice at Benjamin's work events. Of course, I said, trying to sound agreeable. Whatever makes things easier for Sophie. Her smile widened, but her eyes had that sharp, calculating look to them. I'm so glad you're being reasonable, Eleanor. Then she leaned in just a bit, lowering her voice. Maybe it's time you step back and let us take over the family traditions. Benjamin and I are adults now. We need to create memories of our own. Her words landed like a punch. Step back. Like I was some pushy old woman who didn't know when to quit. Like the same woman who had raised Benjamin, stood by him through thick and thin, and helped keep their heads above water all these years was now just in the way. My face flushed, but I kept it together. Around us the party went on, kids giggling, guests chatting, champagne glasses clinking, and little Sophie playing with a ribbon from one of her gifts. I understand, I said, my voice soft. Christine tilted her head, studying me the way someone might look at a painting they weren't sure they liked. Please don't take it personally, Eleanor. It's just Sophie needs stability. And Benjamin and I are her parents. We're the ones making decisions now. That last word, now, just hung there between us like something final had shifted. Like there'd been a quiet handoff I hadn't noticed, where my role in Benjamin's life had been boxed up and set aside. I made an excuse and slipped away to the restroom, my legs feeling oddly weak. In the mirror, I took a long look at myself. 72 years old, silver hair brushed neatly, eyes that had stayed gentle even after seeing so much disappointment. When had I become someone they expected to step aside? When I came back into the room, I saw things differently. Benjamin was off with his work friends, laughing about sales numbers like it was the most important thing in the world. Christine was nearby, parading Sophie around and soaking up compliments about what a lovely little family they were. Nobody looked up when I returned. Nobody seemed to notice as I quietly grabbed my purse and made my way toward the door. Heading out already, Eleanor? Father Reynolds asked, catching me before I left. Just a bit tired, that's all, I said with a small smile. It's been a beautiful day, he said kindly. Sophie's lucky to have a grandmother like you. Children need their grandparents more than people realize. You give them something steady, something wise, that parents can't always offer. I thanked him, then headed to my car, his words echoing in my mind. Steady, wise. Things I'd been giving all along, not just in love and time, but in real, tangible ways. That quiet drive home gave me space to think, really think, about everything I'd done for them. 5 years of covering mortgage payments, paying for daycare, sending money for groceries, handing out loans that were never repaid. And now Christine was making plans and calling the shots like I was no longer part of their world. Benjamin barely even called anymore. Unless, of course, they needed something. When I got back home, I sat down at my kitchen table with a warm cup of tea and opened up my laptop. I pulled up my online banking and there it was, clear as day, the automatic transfers I'd set in motion long ago. $2,800 going out each month for their mortgage, $600 for Sophie's daycare, and a trail of smaller payments I'd gotten so used to I hardly noticed them anymore. Over the span of 5 years, I'd poured more than $180,000 into keeping their household afloat. And that didn't even count all the extras, holiday gifts, surprise cash for emergencies, Christmas money, or the vacations they couldn't swing without help when Benjamin's paycheck came up short. Step aside, Christine had said. Let them take over the traditions, as if I was just some placeholder. I stared at that screen for what felt like forever, thinking about what it meant: tradition, respect, family. Then without hesitation, I picked up the phone and called my bank. The next morning my phone rang just after 9. Benjamin's voice was tight, almost frantic. Mom, something's wrong with the mortgage payment. The bank says the automatic transfer didn't go through. I took a slow sip of my coffee before responding. My voice came out calm, steadier than it had been in a long while. There's no mistake, Benjamin. The silence that followed stretched uncomfortably long. I could hear him breathing on the other end, trying to wrap his head around what I just said. What do you mean there's no mistake? Mom, the payment was due yesterday. If we don't figure this out, there'll be late fees or worse. I gently set my coffee cup down and walked to the window. Outside, my neighbor was tending to her Nancy's, same time, same way, like she always did. Some routines I thought are worth keeping. I canceled the transfer, I said plainly. You what? His voice cracked like he was a teenager again. Mom, you can't just do that without giving us a heads up. We rely on that money. Rely. Not appreciate. Not thank you. Rely like I was a service they'd signed up for. I know, I said quietly. And that's exactly the problem. I could hear voices in the background, Christine no doubt, whispering instructions like she always did when she didn't trust Benjamin to speak for both of them. I'd seen it before plenty of times, when he started saying something she didn't like at the dinner table and she'd gently steer him back. Mom, if this is about what Christine said yesterday, she didn't mean anything by it. You know how she gets when she's stressed. Big events always push her over the edge. There it was. The same old routine, rushing to her defense, brushing off my feelings. When exactly had Benjamin stopped being my son and become Christine's mouthpiece? This isn't about nerves, Benjamin, I told him. It's about something bigger. It's about respect. Respect? He repeated like I just said something in a language he didn't understand. When's the last time you picked up the phone just to check on me? Not because you needed help. Not because Christine reminded you it was my birthday. Just to talk to your mother because you felt like it. Another long silence followed, heavier this time. That's not really fair, he said at last. You know how busy things have been, with work, Sophie, everything around the house. It's been non-stop. No, Benjamin, I don't know, because nobody tells me anything anymore. I hear about Sophie's doctor visits from the neighbor who saw you at the clinic. I found out about your promotion from the Christmas card. I'm not included in your life. I'm just a line item in your monthly budget. I felt my voice rising, so I paused, steadying myself. This wasn't about losing my temper. It wasn't even about money. This was about something deeper than all of that. That's not true, he said, but it didn't sound convincing, not even to him. Isn't it? I asked. When Christine told me to step aside yesterday, to let you two handle the family traditions, what did you do? You stood there. You didn't speak up. You didn't say a word. You let her talk to me like that and you just let it happen. You let her shove me out of my own family. I could hear Christine's voice in the background. Sharper now, clearly urgent. Then Benjamin came back on the line. Mom, can we just figure out the mortgage situation first? We'll deal with everything else later. Everything else. 5 years of quietly giving, 34 years of being a mother, brushed aside as everything else that could wait. The mortgage is yours to handle now, I told him. You and Christine are grown-ups, remember? You're in charge of the family traditions and the family bills. But Mom, you know we can't afford the full payment without your help. We bought this place because you promised to help us. And there it was, that little twist of guilt. Like this was all on me for ever offering support in the first place. I said I'd help get you started, Benjamin, I replied gently. I never said I'd bankroll your life forever. But you never told us you'd stop either, he argued. We made decisions based on that support being there. I shut my eyes for a moment, thinking about all the times I'd stayed quiet, when Christine came home in designer dresses, when they jetted off on vacations I essentially funded, when they made big purchases without so much as a heads up, even though my money was footing the monthly shortfall. You made the wrong decisions, I said simply. That hung there for a beat. I could hear Christine's voice rising in the background, though I couldn't catch what she was saying. Hang on, Benjamin said. Christine wants to talk to you. Before I could object, the phone changed hands. Eleanor, Christine began, her tone clipped and professional, like she was handling a client. I think this is all just a misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, I said firmly. You told me to step aside. And that's exactly what I'm doing. I wasn't talking about finances, she said, her tone sharpening just slightly. Obviously, we still need help with the practical things. I meant emotionally. Benjamin and I need space to parent Sophie without interference. Interference. That's what my love had been reduced to. I see, I said. So you want the money but not the presents. You'll take my financial support, just not my involvement. You're fine with my checkbook but not my voice. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. Her voice turned cold, all politeness stripped away. Look, Eleanor, I get that you're upset. But this reaction, it's a little much. Families help each other. That's how it works. You're absolutely right, I told her. Families do help each other. But they also respect each other. They include one another. They don't shut someone out when it's convenient and expect the help to keep flowing. When you figure out how to do those things, we can revisit the helping part. I ended the call before she could say another word. Within the hour, my phone rang again. This time it was my sister, Nancy. Eleanor, what's going on? She asked, clearly rattled. Benjamin just called me. He's in tears. He says you've cut them off completely. I nearly laughed. Benjamin in tears. Not over losing his mother's love or her presence in his life, but over losing her money. I haven't cut them off, Nancy. I've just decided to stop enabling them. But they've got a child, Eleanor. Sophie needs stability. Sophie needs grandparents who are seen as family, I said, not as walking ATMs. Nancy sighed, the way people do when they think they're being the voice of reason. You know I love you, but don't you think you're maybe overreacting just a bit? Marriage is tough, and young couples say dumb things when they're stressed. I sat back down at my kitchen table, feeling the weight settle on my shoulders. Even my own sister didn't seem to get it. Nancy, tell me honestly. Would you be okay with being told to step aside from your own grandkids' lives? Well, no, of course not, she said. But that's not exactly what happened here, is it? But it was exactly what had happened. And the fact that everyone around me wanted to downplay it, twist it into something else, or chalk it up to my sensitivity, that just made it all the more clear. I wasn't seen. Not really. Somehow, without even noticing, I'd gone from being the heart of the family to being invisible in it. The next 3 days were a blur of phone calls, one after the other. Benjamin rang twice more, trying a new tactic each time. First, he leaned into logic, talking about family duty, how we stick together through hard times. Then came the guilt trip. He told me how much Sophie adored her room, how they'd finally settled into the neighborhood, how moving would turn her world upside down. Christine called once too. Her voice was tight, every word clipped and controlled like she practiced it in the mirror. Not once did she ask how I was doing or whether anything she said might have hurt me. No. She launched straight into this polished monologue about financial responsibility and the danger of disrupting Sophie's sense of security. But it was a different phone call that finally cut through the fog, one from my sister, Nancy. Eleanor, she said that Thursday morning, her voice softer than usual. I've been thinking about what you said, the part about being treated like family instead of an ATM. I braced myself, ready for the usual speech about letting go, being the bigger person, all that talk of grace and forgiveness. But instead, she said something that nearly made me drop the phone. I think you're right. What? I asked, completely stunned. I said, I think you're right. I've been watching the way they treat you for years, she went on. And I kept quiet because, well, I figured it wasn't my place. But the truth is, Eleanor, they only invite you when they need something. They only call when they want something. And Christine, that girl's been slowly edging you out of Sophie's life from the minute she was born. Relief washed over me like a tide. Someone finally saw it. Someone finally said it out loud. I still remember when Sophie took her first steps, Nancy said. You found out from the woman at the grocery store, remember? She'd seen them at the park. That memory still cut deep. I'd been looking forward to seeing Sophie walk, imagining her tiny feet wobbling toward me, only to find out she'd already been walking for 2 weeks. When I'd asked Benjamin why they hadn't called, he just shrugged and said, "Oh, we meant to." And last Christmas, Nancy added, when you bought that swing set, the one you spent a fortune on, Christine barely managed to thank you. Then she had the nerve to ask if you still had the receipt, because she wanted to swap it for something nicer. I'd honestly forgotten that. Or maybe I forced myself to forget it. Nancy, why didn't you say anything sooner? I asked. I thought staying quiet meant being supportive, she said. But watching them use you, watching you dim a little more every year, that's not love. That's not support. That's enabling. After we hung up, I sat in my living room, looking around at all the family photos on the mantel. There was Benjamin in his cap and gown, Benjamin and Christine on their wedding day, Sophie's first Christmas. And in every single picture where Christine was present, I noticed something I'd never caught before. She never once looked at me. She looked at the camera, at Benjamin, at Sophie, but never at me. As if I didn't even exist, not even in the frozen moments meant to preserve our family. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I picked up the phone and called Marlene, my old friend from book club. I'd quit back when Sophie was born, after Christine made it clear I was too busy with family to commit to anything else. Eleanor. Marlene answered, her voice instantly warm and full of surprise. I was just thinking about you. We're reading the most delightful book. This woman travels all over Ireland. It reminded me of all the times you talked about wanting to visit there. We ended up chatting for over an hour. We talked about books, her recent trip to see her daughter in Colorado, the new cooking class she joined. Just a regular, soul-filling conversation between friends. No guilt, no requests, no careful dancing around someone else's ego. You should come back to book club, she said before we hung up. We meet Thursday evenings now. Way more civilized than those crack-of-dawn meetings we used to have. I might just do that, I said. And for the first time in a while I actually meant it. The next morning Benjamin called again. But this time his voice sounded different, nervous, even shaky. Mom, he said. We got a notice from the mortgage company. If we don't make the full payment by Friday, they're starting foreclosure proceedings. My chest tightened, but I kept my voice steady. That's not my responsibility anymore, Benjamin. His voice cracked with disbelief. How can you even say that? Sophie's your granddaughter. Would you really stand by and watch her lose her home? And there it was, the card they always played when things got tough. Sophie. As if loving that little girl meant I had to keep covering for her parents' poor choices. Sophie has a home, I said firmly. She's got two parents who should be able to provide for her. Or at least they're supposed to. We can't make the mortgage work with just my income. You know that. Then maybe it's time for you to pick up a second job. Or maybe Christine needs to stop playing boutique clerk part-time and take on something full-time. There was a pause, just silence. Then came the excuse I'd heard before. Christine can't work full-time. Sophie needs her at home. Sophie needs daycare, I said flatly, which I've been paying for since day one. Christine could work full-time. She just chooses not to. That's not fair to Christine, Benjamin snapped. She's a good mom. I never said she wasn't. But being a good mother doesn't give you a pass on helping support your household. I could hear muffled voices in the background, Christine whispering again, likely feeding him lines. Then Benjamin spoke up, his tone shifting into pleading. Okay, Mom, what if we found a compromise? Maybe you could still help with part of the mortgage, and we'd cover the rest. What part would you cover exactly? Well, we'd have to figure out what's manageable for us. Benjamin, I said, trying to keep the frustration from bubbling over. You don't even know your own household's limits. How have you two been pretending to be adults when you haven't taken the time to understand your basic finances? I didn't need an answer. The truth hung there between us like damp laundry, obvious and a little shameful. They'd been leaning on my money for so long, they never had to learn how to stand on their own. That's when Christine's voice rang through loud and clear. She'd taken the phone from him now. This is ridiculous, she snapped. Eleanor, you're being vindictive. This is about your granddaughter's well-being.
No, Christine.
This is about my son finally stepping up. It's about him becoming a grown man, not a dependent child who needs his mother to pay his way. We never asked you to pay our bills, she shot back. No, you didn't, I agreed. You never had to. You just expected it. And every time I brought up money, or tried to suggest a little budgeting, you made me feel like I was overstepping. There it was, the truth I'd been swallowing for years finally pouring out. All those moments I kept quiet, afraid of being labeled the nagging mother-in-law. All those times I ignored my gut just to keep the peace. Fine, Christine said, her voice suddenly sharp and cold. If that's how you feel, then maybe this is for the best. Maybe Sophie doesn't need a grandmother who puts her pride before her granddaughter's security. And then click. She hung up. I stared at the phone in my hand, my fingers trembling, not from sadness but from fury. How dare she twist this around? How dare she weaponize Sophie and question my love for her? Later that afternoon, I finally followed through on something I'd been thinking about all week. I drove down to the bank and opened a brand new savings account. Just for Sophie. A college fund. My name as the only trustee. Money set aside for her future. Something solid, untouched by family drama or guilt. If her parents wanted to play games, I'd show them what real care for a child's future actually looked like. Exactly 1 week later, a dinner invitation arrived, hand-delivered by Benjamin himself. He stood on my porch looking uncomfortable, holding out an envelope with my name scrawled across the front in Christine's perfectly practiced handwriting. She wanted to do this the right way, he mumbled, as if expensive paper could patch up what they'd broken. I opened the envelope while he stood there. It was printed on thick, expensive cardstock, probably the same kind Christine used for her garden club events. Mr. and Mrs. Benjamin Crowley request the pleasure of your company for dinner, it read. Not come for dinner, Mom. Not we'd love to have you.
No worms.
Just formality. As if I were a client or an obligation. Not a mother. Saturday at 6, Benjamin said once I finished reading the invitation. We're making your favorite pot roast. So they remembered that much, at least. My favorite, I said softly. I'll think about it. His face dropped a little. Mom, please. Christine's really making an effort here. She feels awful about what happened at the baptism. Does she feel awful about what she said? I asked. Or does she feel awful that the mortgage didn't get paid? Benjamin winced like I'd slapped him. That's not fair. Fair. I looked at him, really looked. When had those tired lines crept in around his eyes? When had his hair started thinning like that, right at the temples? He looked older than 34, worn out, like the weight of adulthood had settled on him before he'd figured out how to carry it. Benjamin, do you remember when you were 12 and begged me to let you quit piano? He frowned, thrown off by the question. Yeah, I think so. What did I tell you? He shifted, clearly uncomfortable. I don't know. Something about keeping your promises. Close. I told you that when you make a commitment, you don't get to back out just because it gets hard. You stick with it. That's what it means to be responsible. He rubbed the back of his neck. Mom, I really don't see how that fits into this. You made a promise the day you bought this house. You agreed to pay the mortgage, every single month. But you said you'd help, he insisted. I said I'd help you get started. There's a big difference between offering a boost and becoming your backup plan for life. We stood in the doorway, the warm spring air brushing past us. Down the street, I could hear children laughing and shouting as they played. Sophie should have been out there too, but Christine always insisted on curated playdates with hand-picked, suitable families. So, will you come to dinner? Benjamin asked finally. I folded the invitation neatly, pressing down the crease with my thumb. I'll come. But Benjamin, this isn't up for discussion. I'm not going back to paying your bills. His shoulders slumped like all the air had gone out of him. Mom, we really can't afford this house without your help. Then maybe, I said gently but firmly, you can't afford the house. The words landed with weight. He stared at me, his face draining of color. You're not serious. I'm absolutely serious, I said. If you need someone else to cover the cost, then it's not really your house. That's not being mean, Benjamin. That's just how life works. He didn't say another word. Just turned and left. Saturday arrived, gray and wet. The kind of drizzle that makes you want to stay curled up with a novel and a warm drink. And I almost did. Part of me was tempted to let them sit in the mess they'd made without me. But another part, the one that still remembered holding Benjamin through sleepless nights and bandaging scraped knees, needed to see it through. I showed up at 6 on the dot, holding a bottle of wine and Sophie's favorite picture book. Not to win anyone over. Not to prove anything. But because some habits like loving your grandchild just won't quit. Christine opened the door wearing a new dress I hadn't seen before. Elegant, probably pricey. Her hair and makeup were done like she was headed to a cocktail party. Not a family dinner. Eleanor, she said, her smile wide and just a touch too polished. You look wonderful. I handed her the wine. Thanks for having me. The house smelled incredible. Just like it used to when I made pot roast for Benjamin as a boy. Roasted vegetables, homemade bread. All the little touches Christine rarely bothered with. She'd clearly been trying to recreate something warm, familiar. Something that felt like home. Sophie came barreling into the living room, giggling and full of energy. She wrapped herself around my legs before I could even set down my purse. Grandma Kat. Daddy said you were coming. My heart melted. Whatever was going on with the adults, None of it was her fault. She was just a little girl who loved her grandma. "Hi there, sweetheart," I said, kneeling to hug her properly. "I brought you something." Her eyes sparkled. "The bunny book?" "The very one," I smiled. Benjamin walked in from the kitchen, drying his hands on a towel. "Mom, thanks for coming," he said. "We really want to talk things through. Work this out." As if my hurt was just a system error they needed to troubleshoot. Like my feelings were some minor glitch in their financial planning that could be debugged over dinner. Even with the delicious meal, the atmosphere felt thick and uneasy. Christine kept the conversation light and cheerful, chatting about Sophie's preschool, the lovely spring weather, anything but the actual reason I was sitting at their dining table. Benjamin stayed mostly quiet, his eyes flicking between the two of us like he was waiting for someone to toss a match into gasoline. It wasn't until Sophie was tucked into the living room, fully absorbed in her new picture book, that Christine finally cleared her throat and faced me. "Eleanor, I owe you an apology," she began, her hands folded neatly in her lap like a news anchor delivering a prepared statement. "What I said at the baptism was careless. I was overwhelmed, and I said something I didn't mean. I didn't respond right away. Real apologies usually come with a clear understanding of what was said and how it hurt the other person. This one felt more like the start of a negotiation. I never meant to imply you weren't valuable to Sophie, or to our family," she continued. "You're Benjamin's mother, and you'll always have a place in our lives." I raised my eyebrows. "What kind of place exactly?" Christine blinked, caught off guard. "I'm sorry. What kind of place will I have in your lives? Because so far my place has looked a lot like being the bank. I write the checks, I keep my opinions to myself, and I'm expected to feel lucky for whatever crumbs of time and attention I get in return." Benjamin gently set down his fork. "Mom, that's not how we see you. Isn't it?" I said, my voice steady. "When's the last time either of you called just to check in? Not to ask for something, just to talk. When did you last ask what I thought about anything important? Can either of you name a single family decision I've been included in that wasn't about money?" A long silence settled over the table. The ticking from the grandfather clock in the hallway suddenly sounded louder, marking every second they sat there, unable to answer. Christine finally spoke. "Well, we've just been so busy. You know how hectic life is with a young child and all the other demands." "Too busy to call your mother," I said, "but not too busy to call when the mortgage is due." "That's not fair," Benjamin mumbled, but he didn't sound convinced himself. "Tell me about your promotion, Benjamin. You know, the one I found out about from the Christmas card." He looked uncomfortable. "What do you want to know? When did it happen? What kind of raise came with it? Are you happy with the new role?" "I don't see why that's relevant." "It's relevant because I'm your mother. And because I should know these things, not because you need help paying for something, but because I care." "But it didn't even cross your mind to tell me, did it? Because if it's not financial, I'm not really included." Christine leaned forward, her expression taut. "Eleanor, we're really trying here. Can we just focus on moving forward instead of rehashing every little thing from the past?" Every little thing. 34 years of motherhood now lumped under the label of grievances. "What exactly does moving forward look like to you?" I asked. They glanced at each other, the kind of look people share when they've practiced a script. "Well," Benjamin began, "we thought maybe we could come up with a kind of payment plan. Instead of you covering the whole mortgage, maybe you could contribute part of it, and we'll slowly take on more of the cost." I tilted my head. "What kind of part are we talking about?" "We were thinking you could handle $2,000 a month," he said, "and we'd cover the rest." They owed $2,800 a month. They were offering to cover $800, as if that was generous. "And the daycare?" Christine stepped in quickly. "We were hoping you could continue helping with that, just for now, until I can move into full-time work." "When's that going to happen?" She shifted in her seat. "Well, Sophie's starting kindergarten soon, and she needs routine. It's a big transition. So probably in a year or two." A year or two. Sophie was 3. Kindergarten was still 2 years away. They were asking me to keep footing the bill for at least 4 more years. "And what do I get in return?" I asked calmly. They both looked puzzled. "In this little setup where I keep paying for your life," I asked, What exactly do I get in return? Do I get to be part of real family conversations? Do I get regular visits with Sophie, ones that aren't supervised or conditional? Do I get phone calls that aren't about bills or due dates? Do I get treated like Sophie's grandmother? Or am I still just the intruder who writes checks? Of course, Christine said quickly, the words a little too polished. We want you to be involved in Sophie's life. On your terms, I said, my voice steady. Well, yes, she replied, not even hesitating. We're her parents. And I'm her grandmother, I said, rising from my chair, letting the cloth napkin slip silently to the floor. I'm also Benjamin's mother. And above all, I'm a human being who deserves basic respect and a seat at the table. Financial or not? The answer is no, I said softly but firmly. Benjamin blinked. No to what? No to all of it, I said. No to the payment plan. No to continuing to finance your life while being treated like background noise. No to pretending this dinner invitation means you suddenly value me. Christine's perfectly composed mask slipped just a bit. Then what do you want from us? I looked straight at my son. I want you to grow up, Benjamin. I want you to stop outsourcing your responsibilities to your mother. I want you to learn how to manage your own life, to budget, to sacrifice, to make hard calls like the rest of us. And if we can't, Christine's tone sharpened, the edge showing through her smile, then you'll learn. You'll downsize, you'll find extra work, you'll make trade-offs. That's what grown adults do. I turned and walked into the living room, where Sophie was still sitting on the floor with her new book, happily flipping through the pages. Goodbye, sweetheart, I said, leaning down to kiss the top of her head. Grandma loves you so much. She looked up at me, her eyes full of that innocent disappointment only children can deliver. Are you leaving already? Yes, honey, but I'll see you again soon. Promise. I looked at her sweet face, completely untouched by the tension hanging in the house. I promise. Benjamin followed me to the door. Mom, please don't walk away like this. We need you. I turned and met his eyes.
No, Benjamin.
You need my money. That's different. He looked stunned. What about Sophie? Her future? I paused, then gave him the answer he didn't expect. Sophie's future is taken care of. I've set up a college fund in her name. You and Christine don't have access to it, but it'll be there when she needs it. She'll have every opportunity, whether you two figure things out or not. His mouth fell open. You did what? I did what a real grandmother does, I said, turning toward the driveway. I secured her future without continuing to prop up her parents' bad habits. The drizzle had started up again as I walked to my car, but I felt lighter with every step. Behind me, I heard the front door slam harder than necessary. The next morning, my phone rang at 7 a.m. Christine's voice was shrill, barely holding back panic. You can't just open financial accounts for Sophie without talking to us first. We're her parents. The account is under my name. Sophie is the beneficiary. You have no control over it, legally or otherwise. This is kidnapping. No, I said calmly. This is grandparenting, the kind I should have been allowed to do all along. Benjamin wants to talk to you. Then Benjamin can pick up the phone and call me himself. I hung up without another word. 3 months later, I was in the middle of packing for my long-awaited trip to Ireland when the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Benjamin, standing alone this time. He looked leaner, wearier, but there was something more solid about him, like a man who'd finally been shouldering his own weight. We sold the house, he said right away. I'd already heard. Nancy had told me they downsized and moved across town. We bought a small ranch in Elmhurst. 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. It needs a lot of work, but the mortgage is something we can actually manage. I waited, letting him speak on his own terms. Christine got a full-time job at an insurance company downtown, and Sophie's in daycare 5 days a week now. How's she adjusting? I asked. Better than we expected. She loves it, honestly. Turns out she was kind of isolated before, only playing with the kids Christine handpicked. Daycare's been good for her. I thought back to all the times I gently suggested that maybe Sophie needed more social time with other kids. And every time, Christine had brushed it off, told me she knew what was best. So now I asked, Why are you telling me all this? Benjamin let out a long breath, his shoulders sinking. Because I want you to know you were right. About everything. We weren't living like grown-ups. We were just kids playing house, with your money holding up the walls. It was the first time, ever, that he'd admitted I'd been right about anything, especially where Christine was concerned. Christine's different now, he said. She's working full-time, dealing with a real budget, making actual sacrifices. I don't know, more grounded. More like the woman I thought I was marrying. And what about you? I'm finally learning what it means to be a husband and a dad, he said. Not just somebody's son who leans on his mom for everything. Then he looked me in the eye. I'm sorry, Mom. For all of it. For taking advantage of you. For standing by while Christine pushed you to the sidelines. For not stepping up when you needed me to. Tears stung my eyes, unexpected but welcome. This was the conversation I'd been silently aching for. 5 long years waiting to hear these words. I miss you, he said simply. Sophie misses you. Even Christine misses you, though you'll never hear her say it. I looked at him, really looked. The boy who once needed me to hold his hand through everything had become a man who could finally carry his own weight. The son who used to stand silently beside his wife now had the courage to speak the truth out loud. Would you like to come in for some coffee? I asked. His smile came slowly, like sunlight breaking after a long stretch of gray. I'd love that, he said. 6 months later, I stood in my kitchen with Sophie, rolling out sugar cookie dough while Christmas carols hummed softly in the background. She was perched on a step stool, concentrating so hard as she pressed rainbow sprinkles onto each cookie, her little tongue poking out just slightly. The front door creaked open. Christine stepped into the frame, pausing there for a moment like she wasn't sure she was welcome. The cookies smell amazing, she said quietly. Sophie did most of the work herself, I said, glancing over at the little artist beside me. She's become quite the baker. Christine watched her daughter in silence for a few seconds, her gaze soft. Then, with a breath that sounded like it had been held a long time, she spoke. Eleanor, I owe you more than just an apology. I owe you a thank you. I looked up from the dough, unsure of what was coming. If you hadn't cut us off, we never would have learned. We'd still be living way beyond our means. Still expecting you to save us. Still taking you for granted. She hesitated, then added. And Sophie? Sophie would have grown up thinking that was normal. I nodded slowly. It wasn't easy, I said. I know, she replied. And I made it harder than it had to be. She stepped into the kitchen now, finally crossing that invisible threshold between us. Her hands were wrung together, nervous. I was threatened by you, she admitted. By how much Benjamin loved you. By how close you were with Sophie. I thought if I could make you smaller, it would make me feel bigger. It was the most honest thing she had ever said to me. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was being pushed out. I felt seen. You don't need to shrink anyone else to matter, Christine, I said gently. You just need to be yourself. She nodded, eyes glistening. I'm trying to figure that out, she said softly. Just then, Sophie looked up from her cookie masterpiece, frosting smeared across her cheek like war paint. Mommy, look, she beamed. Grandma Cat showed me how to make snowflakes. Christine smiled. And this time, it wasn't one of those polite, rehearsed ones. This smile reached all the way to her eyes. They're beautiful, sweetheart, she said, her voice full of something real. That night, after they'd gone home with their tin of cookies, I sat quietly in my living room, looking over at the latest photos on my mantle. Sophie on her first day at the new daycare, wearing a bright backpack and a grin. Benjamin covered in paint, mid-renovation in their little Elmhurst ranch. Christine laughing at the company picnic. Sophie cupping her hands around her mouth, whispering something silly in her ear. None of the photos looked curated or forced. There was no perfection, just life. And for the first time they looked like a real family. Not the kind you perform for others, but the kind you build with love, messiness, effort, and truth. My phone rang. Benjamin's name lit up the screen.
Unei, Ian Suarat.
Hey, Mom. Just wanted to check in. See how you're doing. Just checking in. Not because the mortgage was late, or Christine had nudged him to call. Just because he wanted to. I'm doing well, I said with a smile. How was Sophie's school play? He chuckled. Oh, it was a riot. She forgot half her lines but made up her own dialogue. Honestly, hers were better. Christine filmed the whole thing. We'll bring it by this weekend if you'd like to watch it. I'd love that, I said, meaning every word. Mom. Yes. I love you. I closed my eyes for a second, letting it settle into my chest. I love you too, sweetheart. After we hung up, I brewed myself a cup of tea and curled up with my book. Outside, snow had started to fall, quiet and steady, turning the street into something soft and still. Inside, my home felt warm, peaceful. Not because everything was perfect, but because things were finally real. And I was right where I was supposed to be. Because sometimes stepping back doesn't mean fading away. Sometimes it's just creating the space others need to find their footing. And if you're lucky, truly lucky, they'll walk back to you. Not because they need something, but because they want to. And that changes everything.